Executive Vice President of the Trump Organization, Donald Trump Jr., joins me now. We want to start with the RNC. You know what? Let's start with the RNC. Don, what are your thoughts? Your sister-in-law will now be the co-chair of the RNC. And really good news. I mean, from my standpoint, just did a monologue on this a long time coming, that Romney McDaniel gets out of the way, because that infrastructure means so much. The fundraising group, but also the email list and just the reach that the RNC was frankly wasting on some other candidates can now focus on your father's candidacy for president.
Well, I think we got to focus on all the candidacies, right, Eric? It's not just about the presidency. We got lots of members of Congress that have to win. We have lots of, senators that have to win. We got to win dog catcher races. We got to win it all. But I think the biggest thing is we got to get faith back in that institution. People have to trust it. They have to believe that their money is being spent in the right direction. I think hopefully that's what this does, and that's what this move does. It's a big ship. You got to get it going back in that proper path. But I think this will do it.
You know, and Don, you and I go back a long way. And I remember when your dad first announced he was running for president in 2015, before 2016. And I remember Reince Priebus and Sean Spicer, they were there, and they weren't really they weren't very friendly to your father's campaign. And I was sitting in for O'Reilly one night. I'll never forget this. I'm sitting in for O'Reilly, and your dad flew from New York to D.C. He was almost never in D.C. He flew from New York to D.C. and sat down with Priebus and Spicer and said, guys, get your act together. I'm going to be the nominee. And they finally kind of woke up then. But it's always been a bit of an odd relationship between your dad and the RNC, hasn't it?
Listen, I think the RNC is going to be a little bit more of that old school establishment. That Republican Party, frankly, no longer exists outside of the D.C. Beltway. But it takes a little while to make that transition. But again, I think the moves that happened today. I think that's the final blow. People have to understand that America first, the MAGA movement, is the new Republican Party. That is conservatism today. There may be the Mitt Romneys and the Liz Cheneys out there, but that is a rare and dying breed, and it doesn't really represent any demographic outside of the swamp in America anymore today.
Yeah, we just threw up a picture of a couple of swampsters behind your father there, oh, yeah. Paul Ryan and the Mike Pence kind of baffled. Anyway, let's move on to last night, shall we? So a lot of people are waiting to see if Biden fell, if he tripped, if he even made it to the podium. I will point out he was 27 minutes late for reasons we'll get to in a second. But he made it through an hour and 10 minutes. A lot of people were surprised. But who knows what they shot him up with prior to keep him that aware and that cogent for 70 minutes.
But think about that, Eric. I mean, think about what you just said, right? That is the baseline. That is considered a success. He didn't fall over. He made it through, even if he had plenty of gaffes and sort of lost his train of thought, got a little confused. I mean, he made it through. That is the left. That is the mainstream media. It was a resounding success because he didn't die. I mean, that is not a benchmark of success. That is not a benchmark that we would use for any other president in history. But Joe Biden across the board has set such an incredibly low bar that the fact that he did not fall over and die is considered a reasonable win for them. I think the rest of the speech was a disaster, but the fact that he didn't die, that's dominating the news because people were not 100% sure that wasn't going to happen.
It was.
Which, again,
it was
not exactly a success story.
It was. Him dying was one of the areas on my bingo card last night that people were sending around. Thankfully, it didn't happen. Anyway, so we waited 27 minutes for this speech. Every single year starts at 9:01:30. That's just the way it is. Sergeant at Arms comes out and says 9:01:30, says he introduces the president. President makes his way to the podium. We waited 27 extra minutes for him. There was a protest. And the point I'm trying to make is when he did start, Don, I was floored that the first thing he went to was Ukraine. He spent 5 minutes on Ukraine. Now, I'll let you weigh in on that.
I thought it was...
Go ahead.
I thought it was the state of our union, but it was the state of Ukraine's union. I mean, that was the priority, and that's the problem. That's the priority of today's Democrat Party. Frankly, that's the priority for so many rhinos in the swamp. It was the state of Ukraine's union, not the state of America's union. And that's a sad display. It shows you how far we've fallen. We are so much more concerned about other people's borders, about other invasions, not the one that's happening right here in America. And again, I think that tells you everything you need to know. It's why the America Last movement that is so represented well by the Democrat Party today isn't resounding with Americans anymore. It's why Donald Trump is ahead in all of these polls, because even demographics that have been controlled by the Democrat Party for decades, they're waking up and saying, listen, I'm not going to not believe my lying eyes, because I see it every day. You see it in the stores. You see it when you pay your mortgage. You see it at the gas pump. Bidenomics has failed America, but it's not even Joe Biden. These are Democrat Party policies. He could shut down the border like that. He could just left Trump's policies, but they don't want to. They want to import an entirely new voter base because they understand that they've ostracized everyone else in America. So they got to make sure they import the control that they've dominated and the power that they will get from owning that demographic.
Take a listen to Biden last night, not actually naming your father, but also but relating him to Putin. Take a listen.
Now my predecessor, a former Republican president, tells Putin, quote, do whatever the hell you want.
I know. I follow everything.
He likened half the country to Confederates, and basically there was the implied Nazi drops. Yeah, Joe Biden's doing such a great job. He's instructed his DOJ to go after his political rivals. The people who scream the loudest for the last 8 years about fascism are acting awfully a lot like fascists, Eric. Again, they have big tech. They have the vast majority of the mainstream media running cover for them, functioning exclusively as their marketing department. That doesn't work, again, because people understand it. They see it. It's why my father's approval ratings and the poll numbers go in his benefit each time they indict him further, because they understand that they would do this to any American. If they're willing to do it to Trump, if they're able to do it to Trump, there is no one that they will not do this to maintain power and control, even if they're failing the rest of the country in the process.
So Joe survives last night. He doesn't trip, makes it through an hour and 10 minutes or so. And today they dropped $25 million in ads on their new campaign push. Take a listen. Here's a little piece.
I know the American story. Again and again, I've seen the contest between competing forces in the battle for the soul of our nation. Between those who want to pull America back to the past and those who want to move America into the future. The issue facing our nation isn't how old we are, it's how old are our ideas. Hate, anger, revenge, retribution are the oldest of ideas. I see a future where defending democracy, we don't diminish it.
Now, if you watch the pictures along with listening to the words, you see a comparison between your father, MAGA, and the KKK and racism. Your father's polling around 25 to 27% with blacks. That's a slam dunk win for the presidency. So it's clear what they're worried about there. You weigh in on them trying to relate MAGA to the KKK.
Well, listen, I think it's ridiculous. I think you saw that. I think you saw the reversal from so many of these rappers that are out there that, again, in 16 and 17, it was easy to go after Trump. You're going to get free clicks. The press is going to make you a hero for going after Trump and vilifying him. But I think those people understand the community that they live in. They understand their people, and those people are upset with what's going on. Those people are getting crushed by Joe Biden and these policies. Joe Biden, they liken everything. They're saving democracy. They're saving democracy by trying to jail their political opponents. They're going to save democracy by removing the most popular person in the Republican Party from the ballot. I mean, they're speaking out of both sides of their mouth. The hypocrisy from the radical left today knows no bounds. I think it's just the pendulum is overcorrected so far, Eric, that I just don't think people are buying this nonsense anymore.
So before I let you go, I know you got to go, and it kept you a little longer. The Republican response last night by the Alabama Senator Gabriel, getting panned by a lot of people. Even Charlie Kirk said it was something from a high school play. What are your thoughts on that Republican response? Other people really enjoyed it. Yours?
Yeah. Listen, I think there's one person that can deliver the Republican response to a divisive, vicious, Ukraine State of the Union that Joe Biden gave, and that's Donald Trump. So I think not having Donald Trump actually give that rebuttal is probably the biggest mistake, because he's the one that's done this. We have an unusual election, Eric, where will have lived under the policies. It's not just talk, right? It's not a politician telling you what they're going to do and then failing to deliver. Donald Trump made promises. He delivered on those promises. Joe Biden said he was going to do all these great things. The adults were going to be back in charge, and they failed across the board. And I would love to see him be successful, Eric, because I'm an American. I have 5 young kids. I want them to live in a country that's prosperous, but that is not what we're getting. So the reality of that situation, I think it's a very difficult position for anyone, basically not named Donald Trump, to give the strong rebuttal to the disaster that we see play out before us each and every day.
I'll leave it right there. Donald Trump Jr., appreciate your time. Thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot, Eric.